Yeah. So we have our recording turned on now. So in our session yesterday, we talked about variables on JavaScript. And we said that variables, they are more like you could look at them as placeholders. They're just placeholders for storing data values, right? So to declare a variable, we say you can make use of this keyword let, const, or there's another one we talked about called val. And I was like, ignore this guy completely. Val is a variable that can be reassigned, but it's not recommended to use val in modern JavaScript, right? So you should just forget about this guy for now. Just pay attention to the let and const. Then we talked about the difference between const and let. We said const cannot be reassigned. For example, you said you while you're building a project, you say, okay, const city is equal to Abuja, for example, right? Down your project, you cannot change the value of city to Lagos. City will remain Abuja throughout the lifespan of your application, or as long as that particular file or that function exists. Anytime you mention city, it means you're referring to Abuja. But if you want to be able to change this value down the line in the same block of function, you can then use let, because let allows you to reassign. That's the difference between const and let. Const is static, you can't change the value. Let allows you to reassign the value, right? Then we talk about different data types. Data types that can be assigned to a variable. We talk about a string. A string can be like your combination of bits, alphanumeric keys, right? Anything that is within quotation mark is a string, whether it's a number. Immediately you put a number in quote, you have converted that number to a string, right? But there are methods you can use to change a number back to a string. Sorry, a string back to a number. Maybe we could try that today's session, right? Then we talked about using this keyword called type of. Say type of. Once you pass in the name of the variable, it will tell you the data type of that variable, right? So in also naming your then we talked about numbers here, numbers, these are numbers. We talked about Boolean. Boolean is just true or false. We talked about null. Null means just nothing, just nothingness, right? So there are times where maybe you will intentionally assign a value of null to a variable, maybe because you want to perform some checks down within your project that, okay, when I give instance of a sign-in user, I could set like, oh, when there's nobody signing into my application, sign-in user is equal to none. Once somebody sign in, okay, send the value to, let's say maybe you're using something like mix panel. Mix panel, let me show you what mix panel is. Mix panel is like a tracking tool. Yeah, mix panel, yeah. It's like an analytics tool that can use in tracking activities on your system, on your platform, right? Let's say you build a site or an application. You want to track users' activities. So you want to track if somebody is clicking a particular button, you could connect it to Mixpanel so that, okay, whenever somebody clicks a button, you just send the information there so that your marketing team can use to track usage of your application, which feature is being used the most on the application, which buttons are being clicked the most, which events happen the most. Yeah, that's basically what Mixpanel does. So let's say maybe by default you said like, okay, user click is equal to none. So once somebody click that button, because we can also, okay, clicked user is equal to this person that click, push those information to my mix panel, something like that, right? Yeah, and then we talked about undefined. For undefined, we say the situation where maybe you declare a variable without passing in a value. At this point, the data type of that variable is undefined. You declare a variable, but you didn't pass in a value for that variable. Then we talked about rules in naming of your variables. We say variables name can only contain letters, numbers, underscores, dollar sign. And then we say variable name must begin with a letter, an underscore, or a dollar sign. Then we talked about names, variable names. We say they are key sensitive. Writing age with a small letter at the beginning. This is not the same as writing age with a capital letter at the beginning. These two guys, they are two different variable types completely. And then you should not use reserved keywords. JavaScript reserved keywords in naming your variables, right? And then you should make sure that your variable names are descriptive and are meaningful, right? For example, you can't just say, okay, let y or let e equal to 40. And then you're now trying to store a user's age as e or as y. When you come back to your program, you yourself, you get lost in your own code base. And then if you pass it on to the next person, the person will be asking what is e, or you yourself will be asking what is e or what is y. So you should make sure you name them. The name should be descriptive and meaningful enough, right? Then we talked about operators, arithmetic operators, we discussed assignment operators, and then we looked at functions. Where do we look? Yeah, but we did functions. Where? Yeah, we looked at functions. Yeah, we looked at functions here. We discussed descriptive functions, and then we talked about arrow function. This is an arrow function. Yeah, this is an arrow. Yeah, this is an arrow function. So basically, we said functions that are just like a block of reusable code. You could write a function to perform just a specific task, right? Yeah, that's basically what we talked about function. If you notice, I made changes to this file, and then you see it. Notice that the color has changed. So I can even come here and check the status, git status. It's showing that I've modified this file. So I can push this. I can just commit, add it, and commit it and said that I modified this file, modified lesson underscore 3. Then you can push this thing in the branch, lesson underscore 3. Yeah, then we can now check. Let's check out to our new folder, which is lesson underscore 4. So here we created this file. So yeah, basically today I wanted us to look at, let me check. Okay, today I wanted us to look at arrays. To look here, and we'll look at objects, and then we could look at control flow statement. Oops. What did I do? Okay, yeah. So these are the things I wanted us to look at today. But before I proceed, I don't know if anybody has any question regarding what we
Okay,
did.
sir. I wanted to, from the recap you did, what I understand is if you have created different branches, sorry, I'm on the road. If you have created different branches, then for you to send your existing file that you create, you first and foremost, you commit. When you commit, then you push. I think that was where I was. That was what I was not doing.
There are 3 steps. You add, commit.
Okay, okay, sir. Thank you. I will practice that.
So you see my command. The first thing was add, commit, then I push.
Okay, sir. Thank
So you add first, commit, and then repeat.
you. Okay, sir.
Right. So yeah, today we'll be looking at arrays basically. And for arrays, we'll see. Uh, let me see. Okay, so if you look at our at the if you look go through the elements, it will say that an array is just another list of items, like a numbered shopping list, right? So maybe basically you could have this is a typical example, an array like this. This is an array. So an array is just look at it as a collection of items, basically, right? You just put your angle bracket opening and then the closing, and then in between these two you now put in the values, right? So each of these value has what we call an index. So this is an index. This It has an index. So indexes are basically the positions where those values are, right? So for example, this one, for arrays, you start counting from zero, right? So this is on index zero, this is on index one, and this is on index two. Let's say you want to like this can you can have an array of people, right? Store people's name. You can have an array of items. Let's say maybe you are even building a project that has menu items. You could have an array of menu items. So you could call this even menu items. And then this can be more like you can have this place like maybe this is an overview. This is let's see, dashboard. Let's change this guy to something like this. Oh my god, stop it. Yeah, so this like maybe your menu item, and then you want to map, you can display it, right? So a situation where anytime you want to add another item to your menu items, you could just come here, put comma, add it, and automatically it gets like, okay, you now have help, contact us, automatically it gets displayed on your system, right? So to access each of these values, that's why I said, and I was now saying that you use the index values. Each of them has an index. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can do something like let's console log to check. We can say, okay, console.log menu item, the so console.log. So inside the log, we are now calling menu items using a square bracket to now pass in the index 0. So let me run this file and see. This is not going to work. Why? Because I am not inside the folder where this file is, right? So we navigate inside the folder. All what we need to do is cd into lesson 4, right? So now I can run that command, node.js run 4. You can see overview. So I'm calling index 1, 0. So this is the first one, right? So if it is index 1 and I run this, you see dashboard. This is dashboard. If it's index 2 that I want to access, we'll change that number to 2 and the output will be what? Settings, right? As well, you can find out the length of your array. This is an array. If you want to know like the length, by length, you want to know the number of items, how many items are inside of this guy. You could just simply do the menu items, which is the name of your array, dot just length, right? So once you do this, you run this, you can see it's showing us 7. There are 7 items inside: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, right? So it just shows you the number of items you have in the arrays. That when you're using this dot length. So there are times where you want to write conditions or algorithms that, okay, for these values that are coming in, I want to map into all of the elements in this array and print all of them out. And I want to do this from the first item to the last item. So I don't want to come, basically what I mean is I don't want to come and be doing console.log, console.log menu items 0, menu item 1, menu item 2, menu item 3. I could just write one condition that runs through the entire array and then console log everything that is inside that array for me, right? So this concept of array is very, very important in building your applications. You could have a situation whereby uh, I don't want to show us live project that I'm working on. So, but basically, you could have a situation whereby, yeah, for example, now you have a project that you save names of people working in an organization. So the manager will come on the system, log in, and then write, okay, Samuel works here in this department, save. You can write Kinde work in this department, save. Destiny work in this department, save, and all that, right? So now he has saved it. You want to display this information somewhere. What is coming back? So he has saved it in the database, right? The database store those information, and then when you try to fetch, it returns it as an array, right? As a bulk of an array. So you need to then map, like run through that array to fetch all the items inside and then display 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on the screen, right? Yeah. So basically, that's like those are like maybe real life scenarios you get to face. Maybe once we start building stuff, you're going to see a lot of that. We'll interact with APIs. I think there are fake APIs we can use. Yeah, I can even show you something. I think this is called fake API, right? I've forgotten the name. Fake API, let's see. Oh, yeah, fake API.net. Oh, fake store API. I like this one more. Let's go back. I've used this one a lot. Fake store API. So basically, I just want to show us how Redux, how when the data is returned from the back end, it usually looks like. Oh, good. Yeah, good. This makes sense. This makes sense. Let me zoom in a bit. Ignore all this other plenty noise. Yeah, ignore all this other plenty noise. This is what I just want us to focus on. So there's an API here that gets all products. Here, it simply means it returns all the products stored in the database, right? So if this is the response, so you see this is the API call, then this is the sample response. So this is how it usually look like. You can see this curly bracelet to show you that this is an array. So it returns as an array of objects, right? It's returning as an array. This is an array of objects. So imagine this data, you have plenty of this data. You can then map through, like you can loop through this array to display those information on your system, right? Or on the UI, basically, right? So this will then launch us into the next concept called objects. So what are objects, right? If you're looking at objects, for objects, you could have a typical example, like let's say we have something like const user. Yeah, user. This one is using curly bracelet, right? The former array uses angle bracelet. This one uses the curly bracelet. This one just keeps your values. Your values here can be anything. You can even pass in numbers here. Numbers. You can even pass in booleans. So this is just an array of different combinations of data types, right? And then for this guy, what it does is it has a key and a value. It has a key and a value, right? So for example, user can have a user name is the key. The value is Samuel. So we could still have, yeah, maybe things like age, email, and all. So this is a typical object. It has a key and then a value. To access the value, you just do something like, let's say maybe I want to see the name of this user, right? The name, for example, I want to see the log, the name of this user. All what I'm going to do is user dot the value. So this will print out the user's name. If I want to see the age, I can then do user dot the age or user dot the email to access the email, right? But for these guys to access a particular value, that's where you're now doing menu items followed by the index of that particular value you want to see, right? So let's run this. You can see somewhere outputted here because I console log user.name. If I want to see the age of this user, I'll say, okay, user.age, right? Let me run this. You can see the age is 20, right? So if I want to perform any particular action on this user, right, I can say, okay, something like if user.age is greater than 18, then I can do console.log user is an adult. Let me comment this guy. Let me also comment this guy, right? So our user here is 20 years, right? So it's greater than, if it's greater than or equal to 18, let's console log that this guy is an adult. Else, let me do console.log user is a minor. So let's run this command and see Node.js. What's the output? User is an adult because the age of user here is 20. Let me change this age to 10 and save it. Let's run this. We can now see that user is a minor because it's 10 years old. So you can, this is basically how you build algorithms in system, how to build your checks, right? So, okay, let's say maybe I'm building a system that should be accessible by adults only. So at this point, I can now say, oh, user is a minor, do not grant access to this system. So the system will then throw you off or will not even allow you to log in or will not allow you to create an account. So maybe systems that then check somebody's age when the person is trying to log in. Once you submit in your date of birth, the system takes the current date and do the plus and minus to know your current age and then check if this user.age or if this input field or if this user.age, for example, is greater than or equal to 18, allow the person to proceed. If not, you now see an error at your UI that, oh, you cannot create an account because you are a minor. So this is basically how some of those algorithm works, right? So coming back to arrays, an array can contain an object, right? So we'll have an array that looks like this. Maybe let me call this, let me just comment this. Comment this one too. Let's go down a little bit. So we'll have something that looks like this. We'll have const. Let's say user one. So this is an object. User one, this is an object named Samuel. Age 10, email. Give me an email. Samuel, let's see, at gmail.com. Yeah, you can see now, then this brings us back to concept of data type. You know, this is a string, this is a number, this is also a string, right? We could do is male, or maybe, yeah, or we could do is married, false, right? or no, this is true. And then we could have another user. Then we could have const user 2 equal to John, age 20. This is his email, and then this is user 2, right? Then we could have something like const users equal to this. So this is an array of users. So this array contains object user 1. This is user 1. This is user 2. Right? So this is an array of objects, basically, right? So we can even perform certain operations here, right? We could do things like maybe if no, let's, what can we do here to make this a little bit fun? Okay, I know what we can do. Let's launch the next session, which is control flows. Control flows. Control flows. Yeah, so for control flows, there are different kinds of control flows we'll be looking at. Let me see. And this give me some examples of control flows statements in JavaScript. Right. Yeah. So these are like some examples of control flows in JavaScript. We have um, one if else. If you notice, I use if else here. If user.age is greater than or equal to 18. If that's true, do this thing. Else, if it is not true, that's where the else block now run. Do this. So this is the user flow. Then that's the if else statement. We have the switch statement. And then we have loops. That's the for, why, do, why. This statement allows you to control the flow of your program, right? Basically, that's what these statements do. They allow you to control the flow of your program based on a certain condition, or to repeat actions multiple times, right? So yeah, this is a condition. It will allow you, this particular statement will allow you to do a particular thing if a particular condition is met, just the same way we looked at the if else above here, that if the user's age is greater or equal to 18. Greater or equal to 18 here implies that from 18 upward, greater than 18 or is equal to 18, right? You could have less than or equal to. I think this is all under assignment operators. I don't know, did we do this? I think so. I can't remember. Right? Yeah. So if this condition is met, then perform the actions in this block. Else, if that condition is not met, then you can do this, right? You could use this thing in a typical situation, like let's say maybe let me have something like, you could have something like let's see, let student grade is equal to 85. Now you could have, don't worry, let me just write this, maybe this will make sense. Oh yeah, good. So you could have multiple if else, right? Looking at this example now, let student grade equal to 85. So I want to like build a grading system. If the student, so we can always change this value, right? So let's say maybe a student score 85. This is our grading system now. Our grading system is saying that if a student grade is greater or equal to 90, tell us that this student got an A. If it is greater or equal to 80, so basically we are looking at from 80 to 89 is B. From 90 to 100 is A. From 70 to 79 is C. From 60 to 69 is D. Anything below 60, call it an F. This is the grading system we built. So let me clear my terminal. Let's run this thing and see. Let me check if there's any console log above. There's none. All right, so let's run this node, this guy. So we say this, you got a B. You scored 85, right? So we say from 80 and above is B. So let's say maybe what you scored here was 89. This is still a B. See, this is still a B. But once your score is now 90, let's run this and see, is now an A. What if your score is 60? Let's run this. It's a D. You see, equal to 60, right? What if your score is 59? Let's run this. Is an F, right? So this now just dynamically accepts values. Once you set a value for this guy, right? Once you set a value for this, it runs through our grading system and then tell us your grade. So this is an if-else statement. So you can loop it to have if this, else if. So, but instead of having this multiple else if, that is where you can, if you want to write clean code, you use the switch statement. You now use the switch statement, right? That's where you can have this. Let me break. See, break this here, break default field and odd. So now this is a switch statement. The same thing we wrote here. Let me just console log this guy. Okay, let me just put them side by side so we can just have what it means. So switch statement is doing the same job of an if else, but instead of having else if, else if, else if, else if, else if, you could just use a switch statement. So you have switch followed by the variable you are accepting. Here is student grade. Case, you are now checking in a case where student grade is 90, console log, you got an A, and break. Break is like stop at that point. But if students, if the grade is 80, console log this thing, and then break, stop the project from the program from running further. Right? You see, this actually looks neater compared to the else if we are writing up above here. Right? So let me comment it and then let's see how, if this will also give us the same result. Right? So let me clear this. So we have 59. So let's run 59 and you got an F. So for the case, you also have like a default value, which is almost like the else, right? If none of the condition above passes, it falls down to the default value here. Same approach is happening here. If none of these cases pass, then come back to this default, which is this guy here, right? So let's change this to, let's say 60 or 79. And run this again. I like this. We run this again, and what is it giving us? F. Why is that so? F. Because our case is like 70 specific. Like it didn't give us a range. This was giving us a range greater than or equal to. But now I gave it 79, and the case do not cater for 79. So it means there's something wrong with our condition here, right? So, but let's see, if I give this 70 exactly and I run this thing, you see it gave us a C. Where is the C coming from? Here. So then how can we now make case statement cater for this? Hmm? How can we make our case statement solve this problem? Any idea? Nobody saying anything. All right, we'll proceed to the next loop. We'll come back to that as well. So then the third option we have here, we have loops. We have for loops, while loops, do while loops. Basically, let me comment these guys above here. Yes. So we'll talk about for loop first. We have under loops, we have for loops, while, and then do while loops. Because of time, we'll just look at only the for loop, which is like the most common. So this one allows us to repeat actions multiple times. Remember, I kept an array here. I didn't talk anything about it. I was like, let's come down here and then we'll come back to this guy, right? So we have an array called users. This is an object, this is an object, two objects inside of this array. Let's say maybe we have, let's make it user 3, and then we have values for user 3. So let's add user 3 here. User 3. Wait. So we can come down here now. We said that these statements allow you to control the flow of program based on certain conditions. That is basically the job of switch and then else if else. Those guys allow us to control based on certain conditions. Then this guy here, they allow us to repeat actions multiple times. We could do something like for, we'll say let users. So this is a typical for loop, right? It begins with, you know what let is? This is a variable. So for loop has 3 conditions here, 3 statements rather. This first statement is called the initializer. Did I cover this in our notes? Let me check. I don't think it's covered. But yeah, maybe I'll update those notes as well. So we have the initializer. We have, so let me go over on it. I think this should even give us, let me see. Okay. Anyway, I'll just explain this, right? So this is the initializer. Basically, you're saying where to start from. That let I can be anything. It can be X, you can use Y, you can use Z, you can use anything, right? But usually you just see people using I for indexes or something, right? I to be equal to 0, and this is another statement. And then this is the third statement, right? So remember we use length somewhere above here when we're trying to check the length of an array. You say you call the name of the array and then put dot length, right? Yeah. So if you hover over this length, you can see the description that is coming here. You say get or set the length of the array. This is a number one higher than the highest index of, yeah, I don't want to go into that. So basically, this dot length gives you like the number of items in that array. So this is also a condition. We discussed this when we are looking at assignment operators. So I increment, so this is like an increment. So this is another condition. So you say, okay, I'm beginning off with I to be equal to 0, but I want I to be less than the length of this user's array, right? What did I do? Yeah. And then I want to be incrementing I by 1. So basically, this is what's happening here. Let's say, let me look for a very easy way to explain this. Let me create a new array here called const numbers. Yeah, this will work. Let me use numbers. Yeah, const numbers. Good. Now I'll go back to the previous array. So we have an array here of numbers. You just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers in this array. There are 5 digits in this array. So I'm saying that I'm starting at index, or let me just call this index in full. Hence, already have an understanding of what index are. So I'm starting at, remember I also told us that the first value in this array, its index is 0. This is 1. This is 2, 3, and then this is 4. The first item is of index 0, right? So I'm saying that from the first value, I want to begin with the first value. So basically what I'm trying to do here is I want to console log all the elements of this array, right? Let me run this command. You see what I'm talking about. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 printed in my console. I didn't do the initial console dot log numbers square bracket 0. I'm sorry guys, let me take a quick call. It's been calling since. Okay, so basically what I did was I just loop. The right word is loop. I'm trying to, yeah, I just loop, right? By loop, it means you're going over and over something. So what I did was, the first instance, this is what is happening. Console.log num index. It's the same thing as what is happening here, right? So let's come back. Let's look at this in one after the other. Nums, you know, numbers, index. What's the value of the initial value of index is 0. So it's going to print 1. That's why we have 1. It will now check, is index less than the length of this array? What's the length of this array? Is 5. So is 0 less than 5? True. So if 0 is less than 5, it will now do index plus plus. That's index plus 1. The value of index is 0 plus 1 now becomes 1. 0 plus 1 now becomes 1. It means that the new value of index is now 1. So it's now put 1 here. So it now console.log number 1. And this is 1. 1 is 2. Remember, this is index 0, index 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is now 1. So it will now print 2. So the new value of index is 1. It will now check, is 1 less than 5? Remember the length is 5, right? Yes. So if 1 is less than 5, it will now do the increment again. 1 plus 1, 2. So now it will now inject 2 here. So what is 2? 0, 1, 2. 2 is 3. It will now print 3, right? It will go back again. Index is now 2. Is 2 less than 5? Yes. It will now add 1. This is what is doing 1 here. It becomes 3. So it will now inject 3 here. So what is 3? This is 0, 1, 2, 3. 3 is 4. It will now print 4. Then it will go back, right? So remember this 0, 1, 2, 3, right? It will go back. The current value of index is 3. Is 3 less than the length of the array, which is 5? Yes, 3 is less than. Then to now do 3 plus 1. So the new value of index now is 4. So it will now inject 4 here and come back. Or this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is 5. It will now print 5 in our console, right? Then at this stage, it will do the increment again. So that becomes now, you remember index, we stop at index 4. 0, 1, 2, sorry, 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So it will now add, it will now become 4, right? It will now add for 4. So it will come back and check, is 4 less than this? Yes. Then it will now increment 4 plus 1. This becomes 5. Now, but this is 1, 2, 3, 4. There's no fifth digit to add, to print out, right? So it will run the condition again. Is 5 less than 5? No. Then that's when this block will break. Then to just print only this output. So it is going to run until this condition fails. So this is the condition that fails. So you can call this one the initializer, you can call this one the condition, and then this one as the operation. So this is basically how a for loop works, right? So if we bring it back to what we are trying to do earlier, let me say, okay, let me leave this as index and call this users. So by users here now, I'm trying to use this array. So if I want to print all the names of people here, this is basically what I can just do. Index is equal to 0. Index should be less than or equal to users dot length, and then index increment. And then I can now say users index dot name. So if I run this, you see it's going to print out all the names of people. You see printed Samuel, John, Jane. You can see Samuel, John, Jane. So here now, with our knowledge of conditions, if I want to run a condition, I can then come back and say, do something like, okay, X. Can come inside this block and write a condition that say if users.index.name is equal to John, I can do console.log. I can print out the email of John, right? So let me run this. You see, I run this thing. Let me see, something went wrong. Okay, let me see what I did wrong. Okay, I need one curly bracelet here. All right, so let me run this again. You can see if it will map through the entire users and check for John and then console log the email of John. This is John's email. See, this is John's email. I can write maybe more complex algorithm here that, okay, if there's I could do something like a user, I can do like a user with the name John was found, right? So I can do this, run this thing. So you can see a user with the name John was found. Let me put an else to this. I can see user not found here. Let me just see user not found. Right. So let's say maybe I pass in a name that does not exist in that array. Let's say Joe, right? So let me run this thing. You can see user not found for the 3 different objects. There's no user here with the name called Joe. There's no user with the name called Joe. But if I say, okay, maybe Samuel, right, I can run this. Let me see. Somewhere. Yeah, let me clear this and run this again. Can see a user with the name Samuel was found, because yes, actually there's Samuel here. So you can run multiple conditions, can perform so many operations with this. Yeah. So basically, that is it for loops, and that's it for control flows, basically, right? So yeah, we discussed arrays, and then we talked about objects, and then we said an array can contain different items. It can contain strings, it can contain numbers, it can contain boolean as well. It can even hold objects, just as we have it here, right? And then with our knowledge of control flows, you can write if else statements to do a particular thing, right? Or you can use the switch statement. You can as well have, we also talked about loops. For loops, we only discussed the for loop. So basically, loops just allow you to repeat actions multiple times. Just run over something and repeat a particular option and action, right, multiple times. So the statements, they allow you to control the flow of your program based on certain conditions. That's the if, else, and then the switch statement. Yeah, so that would be all for today's session. I'll push this as well. So now that I've made changes as usual, I can do my git status check, I'll do git add, and then commit my changes, and I can call this arrays and object lesson, and then I can push this in my branch called lesson for touches. What went wrong? Yeah, let me see. PWD. Let me see where. Okay, let's go out one step. CD back here. Hit status and then push from here. Yep. So you see everything has pushed. So if we go to our remote repository, we should be able to see lesson 4. If you click on this folder, you should be able to see this, and then you can see all that we did in this session. All right. Thank you so much, guys, for your time. I don't know if there are any questions that we quickly attend to. Yes, testing shoot.
Okay, sir. So what I want to ask is, for before you push now, like you finished all your code and everything you want to do. So before I was thinking that if you like write a particular line, you have to like commit, then you push so that it will be saving bit by bit. So the question is, so you can like actually finish all the work you want to do for that day before you commit and then push.
Yeah, you can finish all the work you want to do for that day before you commit and push, but that's not a good it's not a good practice. A good practice is when you have done one feature, or when you have done one, yeah, one particular feature that works, or build one particular algorithm that works, push that algorithm. Why? Because let's say down the line, you now make certain mistakes. But remember, you had something that was working very fine. But you want to then get rid of all those other new things you did. You could just erase them out and go back to where things were working fine for you. So it's a good practice that once you have something that works, you push and then continue with another.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
All right. I think if there are no other questions,